Abhi's back was turned to me and he seemed to be watching cricket on television eagerly when I arrived. I had caught a glimpse of him through the window which had a curtain that was drawn back. I was nervous and excited and suddenly unsure of myself. What was I doing, turning up at his house just because he had asked me to? After all, I hadn't even known him for long. How could I get carried away like this, just because he had written me a nice letter? For a moment I considered turning back and going home. I could always call him and say that something had turned up and I couldn't come, he would never know. But then I rang the bell. Abhi jumped up almost immediately and switched off the TV. He saw me through the window and his face broke into a wide grin. "Welcome, welcome," he boomed as he opened the door and held out his hand. "Hi," I smiled as we shook hands, as though we were meeting formally for a business meeting. He led me to the drawing room, which was tastefully done up, and motioned to me to sit down. I sank into a plush coffee brown 3-seater sofa and he took a seat on the armchair beside me. The whole place had an understated elegance. The stream of light flowing in through the window made the atmosphere very cheerful. I forgot my initial hesitation and immediately felt at home. God, I was waiting and waiting. "I was so scared you had changed your mind," he said. "I am on time." I had mentioned 3, hadn't I? I replied. "Oh yes, but when you are waiting for something important, every minute seems an hour. I am so glad you came." I knew only too well, having waited the same way for Vaibhav's phone calls. But I said nothing and smiled. An elderly-looking gentleman emerged from another room, which I presumed was the kitchen. He was tall, with a mop of grey hair, looked distinguished and wore a white kurta and a dhoti. "Apacha, this is Ankita, my friend from college," said Abhi, introducing me. "And Ankita, this is my darling grandfather," he said. I immediately stood up, out of respect. Years of schooling in a system which drilled Indian values in you, like respect for the elderly, was hard to do away with. "Hello sir," I said automatically. "Hello young lady. And there is no need to stand. Do have a seat," he greeted me, his eyes twinkling. He sounded warm and friendly. I could sense the camaraderie between Abhi and his grandpa almost instantly. "Are you in the same college?" he asked. "Oh no, I am from St. Agnes." "Oh, so you're now hobnobbing with the enemy, eh Abhi?" he joked. "Enemies only at cultural festivals. Friends beyond those." Abhi smiled. "Anyway, Mahavirs can never beat St. Agnes." "That is for sure," I boasted, emboldened by his grandfather's friendliness. "Ha ha ha. Oh yes, I have to agree with you there. Agnes girls are very smart indeed," said Abhi's grandpa. "We will wait and see." "Youth Fest is not yet over," said Abhi, pretending to be offended, but I could see that he was feeling very pleased that his grandfather seemed to approve of me. "I want to watch the cricket match." "Why don't you both go upstairs?" said his grandfather as he switched on the television. Abhi looked at me questioningly to ask if that was okay. I shrugged. "Okay, let us go upstairs," I said, and followed Abhi as he led the way up. Following him to his room is really not a good idea, my inner voice was beginning to tell me. But like before, I shut it up, acted nonchalant and followed him. I realized I was leaving a safe zone. The bedroom was positively dangerous territory. My inner voice was grumbling and shaking a disapproving finger at me now. But I was on a high. I was doing something that I had never done before. I was also curious to see what his room looked like. Besides, I had already agreed to come to his home and it was his grandfather who had suggested we go to his room, not him or me. How could I back out now? Well, I said as I entered. I couldn't help it. The room looked like it had been plucked right out of the pages of an interior design magazine and planted there. It was quintessentially male. There was a single bed, neatly made, with a masculine geometric striped, blue duvet, soft fluffy pillows with matching striped pillowcases and a chest of drawers beside it. There was a bookshelf on the wall with books neatly arranged. The chest of drawers had a framed photo of a very beautiful lady. There was a large comfortable leather armchair which faced the bed at a 45-degree angle. There was a cozy rug and a reading lamp beside the bed. There was a basketball and a football in a little open wooden box in the corner. There was also a guitar neatly propped up against the wall. The windows had bamboo blinds. The moment you entered the room, a feeling of warmth enveloped you and you had to fight the urge to curl up on the cozy armchair with a book. "Your room is so neat," I exclaimed. "I like some kind of order and I try to keep it neat," he said. He looked pleased. "Me too. My room is also very tidy and I would love it if you could see it," I said, feeling a bit surprised at myself. Why was I angling for his approval? "Show me. I'd love to see it," he grabbed the hint. "No way. My parents would never agree to a guy coming home." "Oh Ankita. You can be such a kid. Your parents don't have to know about everything," he winked. I felt a blush creeping up my face and tried my best to hide it. "What are you suggesting, Abhay?" I asked, looking at him straight in the eye. "To see your room, of course," he answered without missing a beat, looking right back into my eyes without wavering. "Why? What did you have in mind?" His eyes twinkled. I couldn't believe it. His voice had a very suggestive tone now. And to my horror, I found I liked it. I looked away, trying to hide my confusion. "My room, of course. I don't know what you had in mind though," I answered, smiling, as soon as I recovered from my confusion. I sat in the armchair and leaned back, drawing my feet under me, tucking them in and settling down comfortably. "So tell me, won't you ever even consider showing me your room?" he asked as he perched on the bed and placed a pillow in his lap, leaning forward and resting his arms on the pillow. "Let me think about it," I smiled, enjoying this now. Abhay had dazzled me completely with his charm and audacity. I seemed to have forgotten about Vaibhav. My inner voice squeaked again, trying to remind me to tell him about Vaibhav. But somehow at that moment, Vaibhav and everything to do with him seemed so far away. I was having such a good time that I didn't want anything to spoil it. "Aren't you scared coming to a single guy's room like this?" he asked. He was teasing me now. "Of course not. I spent almost half the night with you, on your bike, remember? Or have you forgotten already?" I retorted. "Ha ha ha," he guffawed. "That I agree, Ankita, and thank you for trusting me. I did mean what I wrote in the letter, you know. I must tell you that the blood bit freaked me out completely." "Did you actually cut your hand?" "Which finger?" I asked curiously. "See," he said as he held up his hand. There was a cut on the ring finger. Then he clutched it with his middle finger and thumb, like a pen, and demonstrated in the air. "It is the first time I am doing something so desperate, Ankita. I wanted you to believe me so badly. I don't go around expressing my love to every girl I meet. I wanted you to see how sincere I was and how desperate. Gosh, you have no idea how much I love you." His eyes were shining with hope, love and sincerity. It was hard not to be swept away by him. Looking at his face and listening to his words, I wanted to take his hand in mine and kiss his finger. I wanted to tell him that he was a great guy and I really enjoyed his company. I wanted to say that I felt honored that he was doing all this for me. But no words came and I sat still, like a statue, not knowing what to say. He mistook my silence for disapproval. Look Ankita, I am really sorry to be so open. I swear I have wished 100 times I could stop this madness of mine. But I am helpless. He gestured, waving his hands in the air. God, morning, evening and night, day in and day out, all I can think about is you. Do you even realize the significance of what I am saying? I could not keep quiet any longer. I got up and sat next to him on the bed. Oh Abhay, I do. I said. I am not blind. I can see. But all this is so sudden for me. I think you're a great guy. I do enjoy your company. But. Say no more, he interrupted me. There are no buts and no ifs in life. Life is what you make it, Ankita. I am willing to wait for you forever. That is how much I care. Thanks Abhay. For what? For understanding. Now end of topic. Do you want to talk about anything else? There was a knock on the door before he could answer. It was a lady who seemed to be the maid, holding a tray with 2 steaming mugs of tea, some fried onion bhajis and ginger biscuits. Thank you Thasai Chekai, he said as she kept the tray on the chest of drawers, giggled and left the room. I suddenly realized that she must have giggled because Abhay and I were now sitting on the bed, side by side, our shoulders almost touching each other. She must have thought we were doing something else. Abhay smiled, the mischief coming back to his voice again. As though we will do anything with the door open. Let me shut it then, he teased. Not so soon, I replied, smiling. By the way Abhay, where are your parents? Do they both work? My mum is no more. That's her picture you see over there, he said, pointing to the lady's photo that I had earlier seen on the chest of drawers. There is so much more I want to tell you, he said. No, actually I want to show you. Do say. I am all ears, I said, propping a pillow against the wall and leaning back on his bed. It felt so intimate to be sitting with him, like this, on his bed. He turned around so that his back was towards me and lifted up his t-shirt. I was stupefied. It was a profusion of angry welts and bruises, some red and some fading ones, crisscrossing each other all over his back. God, what is it? I said as he lowered his t-shirt and turned towards me, settling next to me, leaning against the wall. His shoulder was definitely touching mine now, but I made no efforts to move away. That is my father. He said simply. I hate him. I would kill him if I could. The vehemence and determination in his voice shocked me. His openness in showing it to me also took me by complete surprise. I was feeling a plethora of emotions that I had no name to. I wanted to know more. He uses a belt, the bastard, pardon my language. He said simply. But why? What have you done to merit this? It's a long story, but let me try and make it short. No, tell me the whole thing. I want to know. He does not live here. He lives in Pretoria, South Africa. He works for a missionary organization trying to promote God's cause, he said. The derision and scorn in his voice was obvious. And what I showed you was his reward this time to me, for my refusal to toe his line. He visits me from time to time. He wants me to join him in his mission. I hate it when he comes here. Doesn't your grandpa stop him? This is my mother's dad. So he has no say in the matter. My father does not even know who his parents are. He was raised by these missionaries. He will lay down his life for them, and he just cannot accept the fact that I have a different viewpoint. And how did your viewpoint become so different? I asked, a wave of curiosity and affection flooding through me. I wanted to know more. I wanted to know all about this guy who was so madly in love with me. My mum was a Hindu. That is why it means such a lot to him if I join him. It is a kind of redemption for his having married her. I did not know what to say. I felt like hugging him and telling him that it would all work out in the end. But who knew what the future held, and the assurance sounded hollow to me. I took his hand in mine, the one that had the cut, and held it. It seemed the right thing to do at that point of time. He squeezed my hand as if he was getting some strength to go on. We sat quietly for a long time, hands entwined, shoulder to shoulder. There was so much going on inside my head. I felt strangely connected to Abhay. He made no attempt to move or to remove his hand. Finally, when it began getting dark, I said that I must go home, otherwise my parents might get worried. Something in me changed that day, with the visit. I wasn't sure what it was. There were no words to describe it. I wanted to tell it all to Suvi. But not right away. I needed time to clear my own thoughts, which were still whirling inside my head, as I fell asleep that night. It was the first time in ages that someone other than Vaibhav had